and the all too frequent corrosive impacts of partisan politics. People with the word Democrat, Republican, Green, Libertarian, or Socialist stamped on their foreheads and sorted and stereotyped forever as a result. I've been there myself. It's why I ran as an independent and have governed that way every day. But let's be honest, with my ranking third in seniority on the board, it is partisan politics alone that is the backdrop for this vote today. I'm not using this office as a stepping stone and have pledged to serve no more than 2 full terms. Just over 10 years ago, our school board was finally able to surmount this hurdle and would only serve to increase divisiveness in local government. We should be working to reduce partisan rancor rather than creating new places for it to flourish. The governor was right, and I believe most Arlingtonians agree with him. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Dorsey, do you have anything you wanted to say on this?
I would just like to say briefly, Ms. Garvey and Mr. Weistat on his own behalf outlined very well why Mr. Weistat is certainly fit to serve as vice chair of the county board. For me, the issue is not whether he ever should, but whether he should right now. And for me, as I look at that, practically speaking, over the next couple of years, it is likely that either me or Ms. Cristol is likely to seek the chairmanship for the county board, after which time both of us would have served only 2 years as a county board member. I think it would be in the best interest of this board and of Arlington for at least one of those years to have the experience of being vice chair along the way to better serve the community. So it is with that I would like to then, Mr. Chairman, when appropriate, speak to why I am nominating Ms. Cristol for vice chair.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cristol.
Just a couple of comments about political orientation, the issue at hand. We rarely talk about political orientation from this dais, and I think for the reasons outlined by my colleagues, that is as it should be. But given the longstanding tradition of this body in electing leadership from the majority party members, I feel compelled to make a couple of comments and just note that before I sought service to serve on this board, I made a choice to make Arlington my home, and I did that because of its legacy of progressive leadership and the progressive values of the people who live here. I think in Arlington, being a Democrat is not just partisan. It's shorthand for values and what we prioritize, for meaningful investments in affordable housing, for deep commitments to schools, to prioritizing the collective of the county over the parochial, even when that's hard. And if those things weren't partisan, I think I would have had an easier time in running in a general election without an opponent. I greatly admire Mr. Weistat. His own remarks capture well the value that he adds to this board and as a colleague and to the people of Arlington. I think that electing board leadership is different than electing board membership. I think leadership is about who speaks for the board, even and especially when we disagree, though that might be rare. And it's about who stands in representation of those values that drew me to the county in the first place and that make me, and a majority of this county, Democrats. This is material to my vote for leadership. It's not simply about partisanship. And so despite my esteem for Mr. Weistat as a board member, I will nevertheless cast my vote for those values and for my principles and cannot support the motion.
And I'll make a comment as well. This is an unusual situation, as you can imagine. I will be supporting Katie for the vice chair position. Our representative form of government gives leadership to the majority. This has always been the case in Arlington County as well, whether Republicans or Democrats had that majority. In recent years, the leadership has rotated among the Democratic majority. At the same time, that representative form of government places respect for the views of the minority as a high value. Over my 19 years in office, I have relied on that guidance, and my vote today will reflect that commitment. I've always committed myself to serve respectfully and collaboratively with any person elected to this governing body, as I believe I've done including and especially with this guy, John. John's positive personality and his work ethic actually make that quite easy. Bipartisanship is a good thing as elected leaders seek to solve community problems and overcome challenges. I welcome input from constituents in all neighborhoods and political persuasions, and I've successfully worked with Republicans, Independents, Libertarians, Greens, and Independent Greens on many issues. More importantly, our civic culture and decision-making process emphasizes inclusiveness and diversity. The recent presidential election reaffirmed the strong democratic values of this community as the gulf between the two leading candidates was larger than ever. And many, though not all, Republicans and Independents supported the Democratic nominee. I see a clear distinction between serving on this board, as you've just heard, and being in the leadership of this board. Our leadership team of this governing body should not equivocate on the fundamental democratic values that have made Arlington such a great community. And these two leadership positions are the public face of our community. By the way, there is a distinct difference between our county board and the school board, as the school board positions are required by law to be nonpartisan seats. County board positions are partisan. I am excited to elevate the promise that Katie's passion and commitment to a diverse, inclusive, and sustainable community offers. I think I'm speaking to the next motion. I relish the opportunity for our community to cultivate and strengthen the next generation of leadership, especially in a community with such a high proportion of millennials. Katie is thoughtful, serious, and capable. She embraces the democratic values so rooted in Arlington, and she will be an outstanding vice chair. So with that, we have all spoken. There is essentially a substitute motion on the table. All those in favor of the motion or the nomination of John Weisstadt to be the vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Nay.
It fails 2-3. There's now a motion or a nomination on the floor.
Speak to it, Mr. Facette.
Oh yes, thank you. I spoke to it a little early, so I'll turn to you, Mr. Dorsey.
I'll clean up and mention items that you didn't. I am pleased to have made the nomination for Katie Cristol to serve as our vice chair for 2017. Having witnessed Katie's announcement of her county board candidacy in January of 2015 to competing against her for the Democratic nomination to then campaigning together to this past year of serving together, I feel I've gotten to know you pretty well. And I have to say, your capabilities are extremely impressive. I know that you'll represent this board quite well and use your considerable skills to making our board operations more efficient and more effective. Katie is a skilled, concise, and effective communicator who will elevate what has been our growing emphasis, the emphasis of all of us, on having a government that is more responsive and more quick to address constituent concerns. She also has what I like to call the process gene, where she is cognizant of making sure problems are accurately described. We clearly outline the problems that we have to solve, that roles and responsibilities are clearly articulated, and that we move steadily, and she facilitates progress towards resolution. She has a discerning eye for when government can and should be helpful, and will then move with great determination to move us toward providing said help. And as Mr. Facette mentioned, her heart is exactly where it needs to be in terms of moving this community forward, and it is with that that I am pleased to offer the nomination.
The nomination of Katie Cristol is on the floor for vice chair. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It carries 5-0. Congratulations.
Mr. Weisstadt, Mr. Facette, I actually wanted to make a few comments myself on the last motion.
Sure.
And I just want to say I spoke earlier about why I think John Weisstadt should have been our vice chair. I still hold that position, but that doesn't mean that it takes anything away from my esteem for Katie Cristol. I know she will be a fine vice chair, and I congratulate you, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it